Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday.
Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and I have finally got my beautiful, wonderful friend Emma DeSouza on the podcast. Welcome, beautiful banana.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be doing this with you.
I am so happy. I am so excited. Walnut, Emma and I have been online friends for, oh gosh, Emma, how long has it been? Quite a while now.
I'm going to say like almost 3 years.
Yeah. We've been in a couple of coaching containers and programs, and at the moment we're in sort of like a year-long thing together as well. So we've crossed paths many times and have been across each other's stuff for quite a while. So I'm so excited. It is such a privilege to have you here.
Your energy, Walnut Wednesday, everything that you talk about and stand for, I just absolutely adore. So I'm truly honored that you asked me to be on this with you.
Oh my gosh. Yay. Okay. I'm excited. Emma, I will get you to introduce yourself to the Walnuts who haven't met you before. And then we will tuck in.
Sounds good. So I'm Emma. I am a freelance executive assistant. So basically a virtual assistant on steroids is what I like to call it. And I'm a mom to almost 2. I'm going to have our second in November. And excited and prepping for that. So systems are huge, getting ready for my own little mat leave. And I'm from Canada. So basically you're in the future for me right now.
Yes. Us Kiwis, we always make that joke in the group that I'm Laz in the future.
The other big thing that I like talking about too is I actually have a diagnosis of bipolar and anxiety. And I feel like that's such an important piece to speak about for me, just because it really flows into why I do what I do and why I'm passionate about the systems and time management and mental health and all of those things.
I love that. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of those things, but do you want to sort of start from not necessarily the beginning, but how did the freelance EA stuff come about? I'd love to know your story of how you got to where you sort of are now.
It was definitely a zigzag journey. So I actually trained as a nurse, and I worked as a nurse for a few years prior to all the chaos, but burnt out quite quickly. And I needed to find something that was conducive to the flexibility that I needed, as well as the gentleness, but keeping me busy and creative. And so I trained as a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and that's how the business started. And then I just started to meet all these like incredible humans, and I have the spiritual side, but my brain is also very logical, and I love structure and I love data and science and all of that. And so someone had reached out and said, hey, have you considered like supporting people in the online world? I'd really love your help. And it kind of just exploded from there. And then I burnt out really quickly because I took on a lot of things that weren't aligned.
Yeah.
And over the last year, I've stripped it back and rebuilt it up. And now I call myself an executive assistant because I do everything from personal to business to a little bit in between. And I absolutely love it. And I've started doing some time management coaching for people because of how my brain works. So many people are in the 9 to 5, right? And they have hobbies, they have passions, and it feels like there's 24 hours in a day is just not enough. And like my whole point is not everyone's 24 hours is the same, but there's ways that we can work on it and like get into maximizing your 24 hours. So I could talk about it forever.
Oh, I love that. And I actually could too. And I feel like I am caught in between two worlds because I work 9 to 5, but also on the side, I do Walnut Wednesday, and I am a virtual personal assistant, which is like all the all the bits and bobs for an author online as well. So I feel like I am a walking scatterbrain wearing 3 different hats a lot of the time. But in my 9 to 5, in my job interviews, time management is my bread and butter and structure and systems. And then I come into like this world, it's kind of like I switch into sort of like this really feminine energy. Like I go all the way off the other end of the pendulum. And it's like, yeah, so I would love to pick your brain a little bit more on the time management space for sure. But firstly, tell me a little bit, if you're comfortable, Emma, about the bipolar and anxiety and the diagnosis kind of space. And did that take a lot of walnutting and a lot of like figuring out of who you are, or was it just sort of like a thing and you did it and tick?
I consider myself very, very lucky. So I know not everyone has free healthcare in Canada. We do, but because of that, things can take a really long time. And so I was diagnosed. I started the process at 16, which is pretty early. But I genuinely believe having that diagnosed so early is a blessing for me, because I dealt with some major depression. I had some really scary thoughts, and eventually I told my mom I needed to get help, and she brought me to the doctor, and the doctor had told me it was some teenage angst basically. And the walnut in me said some things pretty bluntly to him. But basically that I needed help, and it would be on him if he didn't get the help. And I think that was the scariest thing that I had to do. But because of that started my journey of support and therapy and medication. And it definitely wasn't an easy ride. I'm 29 now, so we're 13 years in, and I'm stable and I'm healthy and I have a support team. But it definitely is something that's not easy. It's not talked about often. And I love that we're normalizing people being anxious, socially overwhelmed, like all of that stuff. But I think it's so important, but I also think it's important we talk about these scarier terms like schizophrenia and bipolar and these things that are still so stigmatized, because there's a lot of really normal people, air quoting, that have these diagnoses that are living healthy, fulfilling lives, but it's just not talked about.
I agree. It's kind of like anxiety is almost like a buzzword in some ways. My like the 5-1 human design profile in me is like, oh, I don't want to be like them. But it has sort of been like that, and then sort of the not bigger, but like the harsher sides of that, the disorders that you mentioned, or conditions that you mentioned, that's kind of like the scarier side. That's like I'm taking it's a bit more seriously, sort of thing. Not that it's more serious than anxiety, but you know what I mean? So like,
yes, it kind of gets that crazy label very quickly.
Yeah.
And like, that's an ick word, but it does.
Absolutely. And so was the obviously yoga training and stuff you would have centered and found that part, but then I feel for me especially, and my friend Kate and I talk on the podcast quite a lot about this, when we're reaching like burnout or even just in general, list making, that masculine sort of structure, is that one of your almost like it's your job, but is it now a tool for like also your just well-being in general?
Yes. And that's, I think, why I'm so passionate about it, because I truly believe like that masculine system structure side is what allows me to be healthy and allows me to have that flexibility to be in the feminine or relaxing or doing those things, because I know I have that structure at the end of the day, kind of like a safety net to catch me if I'm not feeling well or if I'm having an off day. So I think it looks unique for so many different people, but that's why like taking business structures are super important, but like even taking it into our daily lives is something that I think so many people could benefit from, because even without these diagnoses, life gets really busy and it gets hard to catch your breath sometimes. And it's the structures and the systems that allow us to have that safety net that we're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, but you step back, you catch your breath, and you keep going.
Absolutely. What's your favorite, like your go-to sort of skeleton of a daily system for personal life?
I do try to get up at the same time and go to bed at the same time. I know it's pretty redundant, but it genuinely, like, healthy sleep hygiene is so vital. And so it's usually the first thing that gets cut, right? And so for me, I am up early. Our daughter is an early riser. She's like 5:30 a.m. typically. So getting used to that was a big thing, but my sleep and asking for help, I'm really good at asking for help. I'm proud of that. And so if I have something scheduled for the day that I just cannot do, I will communicate it. I'm an open book. Took me a long time to get there, to be able to ask for help and not be ashamed of needing to move stuff around. But I'd say out of everything, those are my two big consistent pieces.
I love, love, and agree. And I try to do that myself, where I go to bed at grandma time and wake up very early. It used to be to go to work in the city, and I would go to the gym before, but I just kept my alarm, and now I get up and try to go to the local gym, otherwise do Walnut work. But I notice when my stress levels change, for whatever reason, be it in my 9 to 5 or otherwise, that is the first thing to go. My alarm gets snoozed and I sleep in longer, and then I don't have my special Laz time to sort of wake up before going to work. So you're right, the sleep thing really is one of the first to get cut. I agree.
And so many of us, even if we don't realize we have routines around our sleep, we tend to. And so whether we're cutting it shorter or having it longer, once we start to mess with those routines, the rest of the day starts to feel off it's like kind of getting delayed 5 minutes. So everything in the day starts to slowly get pushed back, and it just feels off, I find.
Yep, I can definitely resonate and think of a couple of examples where that's happened to me. Emma, what about, I'm just so curious. We have a lot of walnuts in the walnut tree and listening that have asked me about VA work, virtual assistant work, and what it entails, and people who are secret squirreling, wanting to do sort of like a little side thing amongst their 9 to 5, or maybe even potentially completely ditch it. What does a day in the life of your work sort of entail, and how would a walnut get there if that's what they desired?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about the day and age, the era that we're in now, is that it's made so much online work accessible, and this virtual assistant work just so much more accessible. My day looks so different depending on what I'm doing. So I'm a little bit of a Jill of all trades, I call myself. I work mostly with online coaches, but I do have a couple real world, quote unquote, real world people that I help too. And so a lot of it is just contacting and being in touch with the clients. I try to give myself deadlines and a due date. So if I have a couple projects coming up, whether it's a podcast that needs editing or some emails, funnels, landing pages, depending on when my client needs it by, I try to give myself plenty of time and plenty of space to do that. So I will get up, I'll drop my daughter at school, or we have childcare come, make some coffee, have some breakfast. I'm like very much a morning person, so I do all my heavy work in the morning. And then kind of by the afternoon, I start to burn out a little bit. So things start to wind down. But it really, depending on what you enjoy and what you want to support people in, is kind of what your day consists of. Especially because I am doing this full time right now. There's a lot of promotion that I still have to do, showing up online and things like that to connect with new clients and get feedback, etc. But I think if this is something that you wanted to look into, especially if you're doing a 9 to 5 right now, is get really clear on what you enjoy doing, because if you build from the things that you enjoy, you're going to enjoy it long term. So if you really are into podcasts, you can teach yourself light editing or different things like that. Like I've taught myself how to edit podcasts and things like that. And so that's something you can do as a hobby. You can learn new skills before you start. And once you've started, there's so many groups on Facebook. You can put it out on Instagram of people looking for that help. And the biggest piece that took me a long time to learn is clear communication, and also having a price that you work for that's not underselling yourself. Even if you're new, you're still providing an immense amount of value. And by lowballing yourself, it's doing you such a disservice, and resentment eventually grows, especially if you're doing it on top of other things. Right? And so really my biggest piece was figure out what you like, learn new skills, and get to a price point. Like do some market research around you, but make sure you're charging something that feels worth your time if this is something that you want to take on as a side hustle or eventually a full-time thing.
I love it. I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing those little tips, because I felt like I've always felt like, oh, I'm in service of others, doing the assistant stuff or PA stuff or whatever. And in my 9 to 5, I am also in a role that does that. I would love to have someone do the sort of little bits and bobs that I do for Walnut Wednesday, just because I'm spending so much time doing it elsewhere. So it's always in demand. It's always sought after, like when you really start to sort of look around. But it is tricky, because it's just like the generator worker bee little. Not to say that you have to be a generator to do it, but it is some of the stuff that I have done for other people is very tedious and bits and bobby, and people want that service and want to pay you for that service. So I really appreciate you mentioning the not cutting yourself short there, because it's the stuff that people don't want to do.
It's what you're getting given to do.
Yeah. And for me, I actually quite enjoy it when I'm not feeling tired from my 9 to 5. I actually like doing just the same tedious stuff. Sometimes it almost relaxes me. It's kind of bizarre.
It's like methodical. You kind of get into like this meditative of like repetition.
Yeah.
Unless you're tired, then you're like, I need a nap.
That's it. That's actually it. Emma, a curious question for asking for a friend, aka myself. But I have found myself getting resentful, like you've mentioned. But it's for my corporate job, and it's not the work, it's not the people, but I have so much celebration and excitement on the back end in my other 2 hats that I almost get resentful that I spent 8 hours a day in an office with shitty lighting, weird aircon, and doing the grunt work and bits and bobs for higher ups that get paid so much money, much more than I do. And I just want to be here and celebrating, and then when I'm home, I'm really exhausted, and I don't want to record a podcast. I always want to listen to my voice notes, but I don't, I just don't have the oomph. I don't have
drained.
I'm drained. I feel like my corporate job sometimes it's mood and like where I'm at in my cycle dependent and all the stuff. But I just I've been finding it very hard not to resent my job. And I love my job. I love the security. I love what I'm learning, and I've planned it for myself to correlate with Walnut World and pick up those kind of skills secretly while I'm going. So it's all like thought about and all the stuff. Do you have any advice for this hypothetical friend, aka me, of this resentful feeling of the like, I would rather spend a bulk of my time here. I'm not going to, and I can't. How do I deal with this? What can I do?
I think the first thing is just accepting that that's how you feel. I think so much of it is we're not supposed to feel certain ways, or because it gives you job security and you love it some days, you're not supposed to resent it other days. But I think like the biggest thing that we can do, especially when we're feeling those kinds of emotions, is being like, this is where I'm at, and that's okay. It's okay that today I feel drained and I wish I didn't have to go in because all these other exciting things are happening. That's totally valid. That's allowed. That's you give yourself permission to feel it in the full range. And I think then from there, it depends. Like, you have so much celebration in Walnut Wednesday and all the other things that you do. So I would ask, is there any way that you can bring those little bits of joy to work with you, even if it's just for you? So on a lunch break, you can connect with someone or listen to a podcast that you love, that like you really loved recording, right? And that you're like, it was a good conversation, and like finding ways that the joy that you have outside of work can come to work with you. And again, depending on the job, it can look very different, but whatever is bringing you joy, how can you repackage it to kind of fit in your pocket for those days that are kind of draining?
Oh my God, I'm so inspired. My butt is like on fire because that is such good advice. I had for the my 200th anniversary. It was a Walnut Wednesday and it was a working day, and I just had this secret little smile on my face, like I had this little secret in my pocket, and I was just brimming with energy, and I was so excited and happy to just be alive. I was just in such a good mood. But then by the end of the day, I was tired again because I had lost that spark. Yeah. So I loved that. I loved even like maybe changing a coffee order or meeting. I like that, meeting someone for lunch, podcast in your ear. Thank you. All of that.
No problem.
It was delicious.
And it's all about like experimenting too, right? You might think something will, like, maybe you really want to go for lunch, but you actually find you're more tired afterwards, then you don't have to do it again. It's like, again, that permission to change your mind and to do things differently at any given point.
Yes, you're so right. That is so, yeah. And there's things like booking a meeting room and just going to sit there for 15 minutes by myself.
Get away from everyone, the quiet. Yes. Lock the door.
or a room with a window. Not like the fake lights. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I just feel so excited and inspired. That was delicious. Emma, do you have any other advice for a walnut listening that you feel like we haven't really? I feel like I could ask you questions all day long. There's so much more I want to say, but is there anything on your heart that's sort of like bursting to come out in particular for a walnut that's listening?
I think the biggest thing that I would want to say to anyone is meet yourself where you're at, whether that's in a job that you don't love or in a hard season in life with kids or partners or just schedules. Meet yourself with where you're at. Give yourself kindness. Like, you deserve the most kindness out of everyone that you know, because you're going through it with yourself, and that things come in waves. And even when it feels really overwhelming or really hard some days, that wave will ride through. And just meeting yourself with like grace and kindness, and like if it were a close friend that you would just hug and you say, I know it's, I was going to swear, I know it's super poopy right now, but things will get better and we'll just brace through this together. If you can do that for yourself, it opens up so much more for you, because you're not trying to change how you feel. Like, how we feel is how we feel. And I think so many of us get stuck in our head because we're like, we shouldn't feel this way, or I can't feel this way. And we do all these self-judgments, which just makes it so much harder. It's like telling a friend that you're feeling unwell, and they're like, well, you shouldn't. You wouldn't do that to your friend. And so you shouldn't be doing it to yourself. So meet yourself where you're at. Make a plan to find some joy. I call them joy activities. Even if it's 1 minute, even if it's 3 minutes, even if it's you in the shower, literally just like placing your hand on your heart, right? Like, you have to shower. So take that time for you time if you can't fit it in anywhere else. Make yourself a priority. No excuse not to.
Oh, Thank you. Thank you for the little examples too, because we have a lot of new mothers in the walnut tree. And I think that's a topic that is very, very close to home. I mean, not even if you're not a new mother, but that minute to yourself, it's bizarre how big that can snowball, and you forget about it. And like we said earlier, like we are the first person to go on the back burner when it's involving someone else, particularly our bubbas. So
that 1 minute can honestly, motherhood, life can get crazy. I had postpartum depression as well with our first, and it can feel like you shouldn't take that minute for yourself, or you should put everything else ahead of you. But that 1 minute can be life-changing in that moment.
It's very important to be intentional about it, right? Like I'm totally envisioning like having myself in the shower and doing it. I've never done that before. But how I would like place myself at the front of my own brain and just like breathe and feel the water. Actually, I have maybe done it before.
That's exactly, yes. Just be fully present right there. Nowhere else you need to be in that one moment.
Yeah. Oh, you're so divine and delicious. I actually love you so much. I'm in such a good mood. Emma, tell me about your time management. Is it a program? Is it a buyable?
So I call it the Sustainable Productivity School. So we do have that currently. And basically it is a modular breakdown of how to create custom plans for your life. And by plans, it's kind of systems and structures. And we walk through the different modalities of being present, being mindful, but also your SOS if poop hits the fan, what are you going to do sort of thing? Because it's going to happen inevitably. And we just kind of break down bits and pieces to empower yourself to get through the day and feel like you have that safety net in place.
Oh, I love it. And is it for if you don't have a business, if you're a new mother,
it's for anyone? This is purely sustainable productivity. So this is purely being mindful and intentional with your time or lack of time, and how to manage it maybe a little bit more in a way that you feel in control versus feeling like your time is always getting away from you.
Oh my gosh. I love the sound of this. I will put it in the show notes for us, Walnut, us as in me as well. Gonna click on it right after this episode. And where can the Walnuts find you if they're like, I need to learn more from this divine, delicious banana?
You can always find me on Instagram. I'm in my stories quite often. And that is, it's Emma DeSouza, or you can check out the website. It's emmadesouza.ca.
Delicious, delicious, nutritious. Is there anything, I mean, I've already asked you this question, but just before we wrap up and I ask you the token question, is there anything you feel like you've left out or want to finish up with?
I just want to thank you for having me on. Quite honestly, Laz, like you're such a beautiful soul. This community is so lucky to have you and to have these conversations continuously. And I just think normalizing walnutting, especially in a community that needs it, is just such a beautiful gift that you continue to give people. And so I'm very, very honored that you had me on today.
Oh, thank you. I've back at you, but also I received that with my whole butt. Thank you so much. And it's been a long time. You've been on my little bucket list of interviewees for quite a while, so I'm glad that it finally happened now in divine as it needed to.
Yes, exactly.
But on that flows really, really nicely into the token guest question, which is, Emma, please let us know, what does being a walnut mean to you?
For me, being a walnut means taking it one step at a time. And no matter what you're facing with on that day or that hour or that moment, just slowly inching forward. Some days it's going to look like a leap. Some days it's going to look like a barely crawl, but just moving forward with that confidence that you are deserving and worthy of all the good things, and just really walnutting your way through it until you feel that.
I love this description of being a walnut, because I feel like that happened to me. It's just all of the baby steps, all of the little walnuttings. And then all of a sudden you're like looking in hindsight, like, whoa, I did that. Or, whoa, I don't think really poorly of myself today. Like you put on a dress that doesn't fit well and you're like, whoa, it doesn't fit well, but I'm not saying anything nasty. I'm just going to get dressed and put a different dress on. So
yeah, I love
delicious. Delicious, really resonating, divine. I will put all of Emma's links in the show notes, Walnut, if you want to connect with her further. And if you enjoyed this episode or have any more questions, take a little screenshot or tag us on Instagram when you're listening and reach out, because I'm speaking for us both, Emma, but we want to hear
on board. I'm totally on board.
We would love to hear from you, Walnut. So thank you so much for your time and for being here and for listening to this amazing chat. And go forth into the world and take those tips, and I will do them too alongside you. And let's talk about them together in the walnut tree. But Emma, thank you so bloody much for visiting the podcast. Finally, like I said, it's a bucket list thing. And thank you for all you do in the world and who you are, and for being my friend. And I always love when your face pops up. I'm like, oh, there's Emma. Thank you so much for your time and everything that you are. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a happy, happy Walnut Wednesday, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.